Peter the Great, he was responsible for establishing the modern Russian Navy, the Imperial Russian Navy, ruling the seas of the world. Vladimir Putin has long harbored ambitions of being seen as the second father of the Russian Navy. While we have been reporting about the troop deployment at Ukraine's borders, Russia is also showcasing its might across the blue waters with Navy drills involving all of its fleets. From the Atlantic to the Pacific, Russia is holding drills around the world. It has mobilized 140 warships, 60 aircraft and almost 10,000 personnel. The latest show of strength by Russia. They will take place in the seas directly adjacent to Russia, in the Mediterranean, the North Sea, the Atlantic Ocean and also the Pacific. 6 Baltic Fleet and Northern Fleet landing craft are currently in the Mediterranean. They are expected to steam into the Black Sea. The addition of this increases the options available to the Kremlin, especially if they decide to use military force. This would allow scalability in terms of a large-scale invasion. Russia, Iran and China also conducted war games in the Indian Ocean, seeking to reinforce quote-unquote common security in the region. This is the third joint naval drill between the countries since 2019. Russia says the exercises are aimed at protecting Moscow's national interests and to counter military threats in the world's oceans. But all of these exercises essentially highlight Moscow's greater ambitions, demonstrating the Russian Federation Navy's resurgent ability to deploy across the world's trade routes and areas. The NATO, on the other hand, is also not holding back. The military alliance has responded with its own naval deployments. Spain announced the dispatch of 2 frigates to the Black Sea, highlighting the value of a naval presence in the region. Russia says de-escalation around Ukraine is possible, but it wants the US and NATO to stop the joint exercises with Kiev's forces. This is a crisis dominated by ground combat power, but that does not mean there will be no action at the high seas. Increased Navy activities have become an important element of this conflict. Deployments increase the scope of military options available to Russia as the threat of war looms large over Ukraine after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The Russian Navy reached a low point. Since the last 2 decades, Putin has invested heavily in the Navy, and today it is a potent fighting force, something that poses a unique challenge to the Western Armada. Let's go across now to our executive editor, Palki Sharma Upadhyay, who's on the broadcast with us from Kiev and has been tracking all those developments. Hi, Palki. Let's start off with what Macron has said about the Minsk agreements, touting them as the only way to stop the war in Ukraine. But at the same time, he's not been able to clearly establish how that would happen.
Well, that's because it's not going to happen. That the Minsk agreement, which the West is trying to sell as the peace deal that can avert a war, is inherently flawed. It's a ceasefire agreement that has not held. It was signed in February 2015, the second part of the Minsk agreement. And what the West basically wants to do is to have Ukraine follow this on Russia's terms. And that is something that Ukraine is not okay with. It is no secret that the current Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, does not like the terms of the Minsk agreement. It also goes on to show that what Macron said was being very close to a peace deal has not really materialized. He went to Moscow and he linked European security with Russian security. He came back here in Kiev and he offered something that the government of Ukraine was not excited about, to go back to the Minsk agreement. Now you have to understand what this agreement is about to know why the Ukrainians are not okay with it. This agreement asks Ukraine to recognize 2 areas in the Donbas region as areas with a special status. It will give political representation to leaders from this region who are pro-Kremlin. And these leaders potentially will then have a veto power over Ukraine's foreign policy, over Ukraine's decisions to join NATO or not. And that is something that is not okay with the Ukrainian government. Another inherent problem with this is that the Minsk agreement does not even recognize Russia as part of the problem. Russia is not mentioned there. Russia does not agree that it is party to the problem. How can it be a part of the solution? So none of the leaders here who are basically offering this accord as the solution to this crisis have explained how this is going to be implemented, who is going to be implementing its terms first, and on what conditions. They're basically asking Kiev to make unilateral concessions and succumb to Russian pressure.
Right, and even the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says he believes diplomatic efforts will stop Russia from invading Ukraine. But at the same time, he has avoided spelling out how Germany would be responding to an invasion.
Germany has refused to leverage the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. We saw that in the press conference that Olaf Scholz held with Joe Biden, while Joe Biden said that Russian invasion will be the end of Nord Stream 2. The German leader did not say it in so many words. Today, a French minister said that we don't want to be pulled into a conflict that Joe Biden wants to begin. We don't want to be forced to cancel Nord Stream 2 because Washington wants to do it. So you see, they're not on the same page. At the same time, we saw the kind of scenes that we saw in the parliament of Slovakia, and there are clear divisions on the presence of NATO troops, on the presence of US troops. So within the European Union, within Europe, there are many divisions on how to approach this, and they're all putting their own interest first. They do not want to risk the possibility of losing out on Russian gas, even though countries like Japan have offered alternatives. Everyone knows that's not going to be enough. Europe's dependence on Russia is very, very high. So they want to compromise. They don't want a war. And they've not been able to push Vladimir Putin to give any concession, not even an inch. When the French president said that they are close to agreeing at something, that they're agreeing on not escalating it further, if not de-escalating, Kremlin was very quick to come out and say that there is no de-escalation happening. And you saw 6 warships in the Black Sea. So Vladimir Putin he continues the muscle flexing, and he wants the other side to blink first, basically.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.